This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live.
Hello and welcome to this episode on Teachers Talk Radio. I'm your host James Radburn, and I've got a special guest tonight, Scott Hayden, who's going to talk about rethinking assessment alongside me. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and you are listening live. Tune in live at ttradio.org, or to join in the conversation, download the Podbean app and search Teachers Talk Radio. Follow the hashtag TTRadio. Tune in, talk it out with Teachers Talk Radio.
Congratulations. I think that's going to be the first word for everyone this week who has gone back to school. I've had my middleist go back to school this week, and yeah, it's tough, isn't it? It's tough. But summer holidays, a long time ago now it feels like, and we're getting back into the groove of it. So I'm your host, James Radburn, and tonight we're going to dive into that topic that is really on the minds of educators at the moment. Are our traditional assessment models still fit for purpose in a world increasingly shaped by technology and AI? And joining me in this conversation this evening is going to be a leader really at the forefront of education transformation, Scott Hayden. And Scott will do a better job at introducing himself, but to give a little bit of context, he is the head of teaching, learning and digital at Basingstoke College of Technology. He's been pioneering in innovative approaches to teaching through technology, coaching and AI integration, and he has won countless and multiple awards, including the 2018 TES FE Award for Outstanding Use of Technology and the 2024 Google Impact Award for groundbreaking work in AI. I know he's done work for Google and a National Teaching Silver Award winner and an advisor at Tech. And really this episode tonight, we're going to be really discussing those traditional forms of assessment. Are they relevant? How is technology reshaping it? The way we evaluate student progress, and what the future assessment looks like in this new world. So good evening, Scott. How are you?
Hello, James. I'm really well, thank you, mate. That was ever so kind, your introduction. Very generous, and thank you so much for having me on the show. It's lovely to talk to you.
And I know when we've met and we've talked before, we'll go off on tangents. We can talk. We'll be here all night if need be, by the sounds of it, from our conversation. So I'm really, really looking forward to this. And you deserve all the praise you get, because you've done an awful lot of work. You've thought about things in a different way and pushed the boundaries. And I think that your story and your thought process is definitely something that we need to share, we need to talk, and we need to discuss, because it feels like we're on the precipice of change in education at the moment, and we don't know what it is, and I don't think we can predict, but we need to go. And I think also that feeds into the massive push we've had with cognitive science and the learning of how we learn over the last few years, and I think it is a really exciting point at the moment. So what I kind of want to start with is more about you. And I want for the listeners, for you to give us a little bit of a story of your education journey. How have you ended up to be where you are now?
Thank you. Again, very generous in your introduction, James. Really humbled by that, mate. So, I didn't like school. More I think about it, and when I talk to my mum about what I do for my career now, it feels like I've spent a circuitous route trying to correct the sins of what I had to go through in schools and colleges and universities. That feeling of anxiety and stress and worry and feeling like you don't belong, and trying my best to mask, I suppose, as a way to get through in these traditionalist methods that, well, one size fits none in actuality, but at the time felt like the only sort of possible way for people to learn, which is endless essays, stress-inducing exams. And I persevered, got through, and the whole time, I suppose, I had this sort of love of learning, and I would sort of obsessively like listen to music and watch films and want to know the way they're built and created and deconstruct them. And I was obsessed by the way media was produced and how it manipulated and helped me experience all these emotions and helped me to have access to these different ways of thinking. And that led to me working in media for a while. Some entry level work like music videos, documentary journalism, just small stuff, and then becoming a media teacher. And by being a media teacher for years, I sort of learned my craft. I've done my 10,000 hours, as it were. And I started to apply the things from the media sector to my job as a teacher. So I would live stream with people in different countries, with my students, debating gun control and racism with American students on Periscope. Remember that on an early live streaming platform? And we would make social media accounts, and we would do projects in the community to help local charities, and we would collaborate using online cloud platforms because that was what I saw in industry. And the whole time I was using online platforms to find out what others were doing, and I was stealing their ideas. And student digital leaders was one such idea from Scandinavians and the Singaporeans and the South Koreans. I saw they were leveraging student talent and backing them to help their staff. And I started doing that in 2016. And the college I work at, Basingstoke College of Technology, we gave those student digital leaders a free lunch and a lanyard to say that they were digital leaders, and they could go into staff rooms and classrooms and on inset days trained up staff with me and told them how to use these different methods to engage learners in different ways beyond that traditionalist essay and exam approach. And that went well. We had pleasant things said about the way we were doing things differently. And those students became apprentices and they became members of staff. And now one of them works for the Department for Education, and one of them now leads the team and enables me to do more strategic work, training all of our staff on all things education and training. And I'm ever so proud of them, James. That they're the thing I'm most proud of, those student digital leaders who stood by me. And leaders like Bob Harrison and other educational leaders stood by me and backed me to try and think differently, using technology in a mindful and deliberate way to help all subjects learn in a way that was meaningful and connected to the young people. Because when you empathy map and sit with students, James, you know this, you see them learning in these fascinating ways. And even with our kids, you see the way their synapses connect through different experiences. And it isn't always through that chalk and talk manner. In fact, it rarely is. And I suppose I've just spent my whole career trying to help people who learn differently feel like they belong and feel like they've got a route and a way into learning. Because I think that's most of us. I think most of us don't necessarily want to write that long form essay as the only way to show we are good enough. And when we're preparing people for the future, and we are preparing people for the future, we know unequivocally, undeniably, that in those jobs they're going into, they're not going to be asked to write an essay to show their competence in their role. So, what are we preparing them for? What skills are needed? We know from platforms like UNESCO, World Economic Forum, Pearson, and innumerable other future skills scanning reports that the skills that are needed in the future are that of compassion, critical thinking, collaboration, problem solving. These are the things we need, emotional intelligence. And that's what we need to be developing. And the way to develop those skills in young people is through different means, more creative ways of engaging them and preparing them. And I suppose my long winded way of answering your question about how I come to be doing this is because I'm compelled. I know it to be true that it is not good enough the way it is. It's just not good enough. And we have it within our capacity to change it. And I will go down swinging, fighting this fight, trying to change things for the better for most people who I believe do learn differently if they're given the opportunity to, and that in a way that is more meaningful and beneficial to them.
It's allowing children and students to find their voice. And often I use that technology can be a way, often transparent is the best use of it, but it's a way for them to express themselves, to be able to talk, to be able to communicate, be able to show their true depths of learning beyond pen and paper. And I think that's really at the forefront of it. And it's brilliant to hear that. I must be so proud seeing those students come through. And I kind of echoed a lot of your thoughts about your history of education and your journey through it as well, because I think teachers will fall in one or two things. One, that they really did not like school, and they wanted to make a huge difference and they could see a different way, or those who are really inspired by some key teachers and inspired them. And I think I definitely sit on the thing that I didn't enjoy school, but I could also see that there must be better ways. And the classic of the children keep asking why are we doing this, why are we doing that? My son does that all the time, and definitely challenges his teachers who like to Google the answer sometimes. But I think we lose that sometimes. We lose it. We're bombarded by, we've got to do this, we've got to do that. Here's the next assessment. Here's this next data point we've got to get our class to. We don't sit back and say, why are we doing this?
Yeah, that's something that I am very sympathetic to. I understand that these milestones don't stop coming along, and that is the metric against which many of us are measured. However, I think things are about to change. I think a byproduct of this rise of generative AI is this rethinking of assessment, is this focusing on the process as much as the product, as it were. This shift to real-world problem solving, scaffolded assignments and reflective assignments, collaborative projects. This idea of the rise of debate and podcasting and vlogs and Socratic seminars as assessments and Vivas and all these different ways we can show we know. We've got our hospitality students at the moment, James, who are starting their project in the next week or so, and they're going to be using a website and images and vlogs and podcasts to show the iterations and development of their patisserie dishes. And they're going to be showing through these different ways of expressing their understanding, audio, video, and or image, the different iterations and machinations of the development of this patisserie pastry dish, and designing that project and thinking about the way it was in the past, just an endless, sea of essays that they were assessed by. That fills my heart in the sense that these guys are. This is organic, authentic, related to their industry, and it's given more windows open to the opportunity of success to more learners as well. And I'm at pains to try and introduce these opportunities into all of our subjects at the moment. More group projects, more problem-based learning tasks, and more, I suppose, witness statements as well, when students do the thing, and are assessed as they're doing it with their teacher and a clipboard, as it were. We are seeing this revolution in assessment, and I know ultimately in schools in particular, the exam being the exam at the end of the road, is something that is a barrier to complete overhaul of the way we assess, because ultimately the exam looms, and I appreciate that. But en route to that exam, there's different ways of checking learning in a formative manner, and I'm really encouraged by the Department for Education's moves recently. They know a change is coming, and we've been doing a lot of research with them and contributing to a lot of their projects, and they're really open to all these changes and evolutions within the sector. And it's so clear. Everyone in education says what you said it in the intro, and I've said it in my response. Things need to change. This Victorian Fordian model is not fit for purpose. And therefore once the endpoint assessments that is changed, then we unlock all these possibilities.
I'm really glad you said that, because I always think that you think about the traditional Victorian, well, not Victorian, but traditional routes of education. You go through primary and secondary and further education, and you're aiming to get to university. But therefore, you've got to get your A levels to get into the right university. But before you do university, those you've got to then do your GCSEs and go through that way. So, a controversial question: do you think those summative assessments have a place in the future?
I just don't think they're the only way. I think that gatekeeping almost, James, of that being the only door through. I think that's the thing that's going to change. The idea there'll be other ways around, other routes, other side roads, as it were, that can take them to a destination that is a future career in a respective field that is of equal sort of status to that of a university graduate. We see students at our college, vocational college in North Hampshire, who have qualifications, T levels and level 3 BTEC qualifications, choose apprenticeships and choose to actually go in entry level work rather than university. And that's happening more year on year because they themselves are frustrated, fed up, disillusioned with the idea of a largely lecture based chalk and talk, sage on the stage, assessed by essay approach. They want to do things, they want to actually practice, as it were. So we are seeing a lot of our students, our brightest and best in terms of the academic achievement, that is, choosing to not go to university and finding other ways, and they are finding other ways. The aforementioned student I told you about just on this call with my student digital leader who now works for the Department for Education did not go through university, and she's informing policy that is shaping this very conversation now. And she is somebody who did not fit into that traditionalist perspective, as it were, of what a learner should be, could be, would be. I do not believe that the university way is the only way anymore. And I think universities themselves are starting to pivot and be a little bit more open-hearted to different assessment types and different ways of accepting learners from more diverse backgrounds. That can only be a good thing. And I know that this question of assessment is ultimately the keystone in all of this for it to move. And the more we talk out loud about it, the more I realise that unless that shifts, I think the opportunities for progress and access, more to the point, for people who do not want to just write essay upon essay, not because they can't, because it's just boring to a lot of people. I don't want to do that endlessly, and that is a barrier to a lot of people. I did a master's degree as well, and most of it, I got a Wikipedia article and I was reshaping it with different synonyms. and you know what? I didn't learn as much as I could have learned. And I'll tell you what, the best bits of my master's degree was sat down with my lecturer, having Socratic discussions, talking about things, having that back and forth, that why, what, when, where, how, Scott. I loved that knee to knee, human to human bit. And I think AI frees up the human bit, as it were, frees us up to do more of the human bit where the real deep learning takes place. The master's essay thing, maybe I shouldn't have said that out loud, but I'm glad I finally said it. I've purged myself of it.
You've got your certificate, it's fine. They can't do anything now with it. And I think it is really interesting because when people talk about the future, often people say about future jobs, and I find that's a problem. And I don't like talking about future jobs. I think, how can you predict what that job's going to be? It's going to change. And people go to university. I went to many people who did geography, and they didn't use their degree afterwards, or someone did politics and economics, didn't use the degree, but what they used were the skills they learned, whether it is analysing or whether it is the discussions or whether it was the debates, and it was those elements that worked really well. And when you talk about the assessment side, when I did my GCSEs, I did okay in my coursework, and then I absolutely aced my exams. And even the teachers were surprised, because you can't be necessarily good at one thing and great at the other thing. It's like it's going to be different for every single person. So we're going to have a little listen to the ad, From our sponsors, very exciting because John Catt are one of our key sponsors at the moment, and I have a real problem with books, whether they're digital or on my shelf as well, with education books. And I love to read and decipher all of these things. And when we come back, we're going to really talk about some of those innovative ways that Scott has already done within his setting, about how they have used assessment, and we're glean a few of those ideas from him.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Futurum Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
Though we can't change policy, we can voice our opinion, and the DfE and others are really listening to that. So in response to those limitations to that traditional assessment, that's not going away at the moment. How have you then, give us some examples then of the transformations that you have done within your college that has been really transformative and something completely different against those traditional forms of assessment? And you've alluded to quite a few already, but it'd be really nice to hear some of the powerful stories that I know you have about the children in your setting.
So since 2016, I've been in charge of digital at our college. And the main thing, I suppose, early on was the embrace of blogs and websites with images, vlogs, podcasts, and reflections of the process, whether it be makeup students talking about their designs, their practice runs, and their event they're leading up to, and then creating websites for the public to see so they can then earn money in a freelance way, actually, with a public facing website, developing professional social media with our barbering students, where they can actually learn how to use calendars and Instagram and Snapchat professionally as assessment evidence portfolios. So their images and their stories and the annotations within build up a collection of assessment evidence of the different versions and trial runs and learnings through different cuts, different techniques, different approaches, vlogs, as it were, with them on camera articulating after practicing many times what they're going to say with notes off screen so they can actually remember what they've got to say in what order, practicing their oracy skills and communication skills as they reflect on that haircut or that makeup technique. These are skills that they need, those communication skills, those digital competency skills for the careers that they leave our college and go into. We're leveraging artificial intelligence a lot at the moment at the college. For example, our T-level students in engineering, we're using prompts to personalize revision for themselves. So, for example, one student, Rowan, was using a prompt that we created for the T-level engineering students and was inputting her personal interests. So, for example, she was interested in the fluid flow of aerodynamics. That was the topic she had to revise for in her exam. And using the AI prompt, she told the AI that she was interested in revising for the fluid flow of aerodynamics, and she wanted it to be explained to her in relation to a topic that she cared about and a subject she cared about. And for her, that was the Airbus A380. That was her plane. That's the plane that she grew up admiring and wanting to work on. And the revision prompts, the materials, the resources that come from that AI prompt were all personalized, explaining aerodynamics to her through that prompt in a personalized way that connects with her. Personalizing learning using AI is something we're doing a lot of at the moment, helping her to prepare for, yes, a traditionalist assessment type, an endpoint assessment or an exam in the A level, but revising in a way that was personalized for her. In terms of other assessment methods, podcasting is very popular, James. So students use AI to research and to practice and to get structure and to get practice runs. And they come organized. And when the light goes red, as it were, the mics are hot, they record and debate, discuss, and engage with one another and reflect if that's the task and capture the evidence, the podcast, along with a transcript, which can be used by the teacher to assess and give feedback on for the student. Equally, vlogs and screencasts are very popular, where students can capture evidence of themselves presenting their material and submit it as a video file in Google Classroom. We're using all these many different methods as possible to help people learn. And embracing tools like social media years ago was sort of how I got my career, this second career of mine, I suppose, leading in digital education up and running. People using social media platforms to build portfolios of evidence, LinkedIn profiles and blogs and sites and Instagram and things like this, to build evidence to submit as part of their portfolio. So we've been trying our best to embrace different types of assessment evidence, but always aligned with whatever that industry needs or whatever serves as a bridge between where they are now and their future career. So, for example, some automotive students we worked with a few years back, they wanted to be mechanics. So therefore, why would we give them endless essays to assess them? Their words exactly, actually, now I think about it. And there's one lad called Harry who was really challenging at the time. It's like 2017 or so this was. He would argue as to why he had to do an essay, and I always got annoyed at myself because I couldn't answer him, and he had me on the back foot because he was a very charming, strong communicator. And I look back now and I realised, well, the reason I found it so challenging is because I knew he was right. And years later, with Harry still at the college, he moved to a level 3 course after that level 1 course he joined us on. He was one of our pioneers creating these behind the scenes service videos on YouTube. So automotive students were submitting essentially a YouTube playlist of evidence, them carrying out services, much like you probably experienced yourself when you get your car serviced or get an MOT. You sometimes get a video, don't you, of the mechanic or the specialist working on your car, and the students were communicating and explaining and annotating verbally their process and their reasoning and justification in these videos and submitting them as evidence for their apprenticeship or level 3 program. And seeing these automotive students submit a YouTube playlist of evidence that hit most of their qualification, along with some witness statements and professional discussions, rather than just an endless block of essays that Harry once had to do. Harry could then, when he left the college, submit that portfolio of evidence in a multimedia way that was more meaningful to him. And certainly it was more meaningful to him when he went for his interview at Volkswagen and got a job as an apprentice, because he could show them that he could walk the walk.
And he couldn't have done that on Wikipedia and looking for synonyms, could he? But I find it really fascinating that there's been, especially in the primary world, when we talk about maths and mastery, there's always about that depth of understanding. And when you go to the other extremities of when you do a PhD, you've got to justify and challenge, and you've got experts in that field who are there challenging and discussing, and they will make amendments. And I just feel like traditional pen and paper doesn't do that. It's a single layer assessment. It's not looking at it in the depth, in that context, in a medium that makes sense for what it is trying to assess. And those podcasts, especially through Oracy and Talk, and we're seeing students and pupils who are really struggling with speech because they're not getting a language-rich environment at home. They're using technology or parent. I'm making massive generalizations. I've got 3 young children, but the use of technology is being seen to doom scroll on social media. So they're not getting that language. They're not getting those discussions that you would have traditionally got. And so I think technology in some ways has got a bad name in the whole discussions about banning phones in school. Is actually more to do with what can we use with technology to kind of showcase what it could be done and look at it in a way that actually it's there as a medium to express, to challenge. And I love the idea of the podcast. I love the idea of all the questioning and the depth you'll get in there. But what I'm really interested in, especially with the story of Harry and some others, how have students' input played those new forms of assessment, and how have you adapted things over time, especially from the feedback? Because children do keep us honest, don't they?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and it's the most influential thing for me is the empathy mapping, as it were. My background is media, as I touched on, and in the media industry back when I was doing some work for a large company in London. There was this idea of the empathy map whereby you would sit literally with the user, the customer, and in a focus group, and you'd figure out what they're thinking, feeling, what their fear is, what their pain is, their gain is, and you would shift your perspective to that of the user. So rather than project your own feelings, thoughts, and desires or wishes onto them and what that you wish that they would think and um, experience, you're forced to make notes from what they actually are experiencing from their view. And it's a really humbling experience because you realize that a lot of the time we're missing the mark. And I've been doing that in my role since 2016, that empathy mapping with my team. And we go into classrooms, we sit down, we make ourselves small, we sit at a table, we hear the builders outside the window, we hear the chatter, the distraction, we see the glare of the sun against the board that you can't quite make out the slides. You experience what it's like if the dynamic of the tables isn't quite right or the chair is uncomfortable, and by doing that, you truly feel what it's like, and you talk to the students more to the point. And luckily, I observe our teachers now, so I do that even more and get those perspectives even more. I'm very happy to do that every week. And when you do that and you talk to them and you say to them, "What are you listening to, mate? What are you watching? How do you learn normally? Or what's that you're looking at on your phone? Or what's that you're talking about? You saw this thing on TV. Why was that good? Why did that teach you more than this PowerPoint?" And by having those organic conversations, they like sharing and opening up and showing you that YouTube or showing you that influencer or showing you that podcaster, or perhaps showing you this technique they picked up on TikTok, or whether it be them actually showing. Recently, I saw this YouTube analysis, this lyrical analysis of one of my favorite artists. I'm a massive fan of the artist Kendrick Lamar, who's a Pulitzer Prize winning hip hop artist. And the analysis, the breakdown of the lyricism and the poetry of his words in 30-second snippets, like the best English lesson you've ever seen. And a podcast that I was put onto by a student years ago that is now my favorite podcast, and that I believe is the greatest lesson, greatest example of education I've ever seen, the Dissect podcast, which is a podcast by a chap called Cole Kushner in America, who started a podcast from his garage of himself analysing, breaking down beat by beat, line by line, classic albums from Lauryn Hill to Frank Ocean to Mac Miller or Kanye West. I appreciate he's a naughty boy, but he's a clever boy at times, and Kendrick Lamar, of course. And it's goosebumps good. And every time I listen to an episode, I come away from it thinking, shame on me for never reaching this level of education. Shame on me for never being this engaging and effective in articulating a point. And leveraging podcasting for learning is something I'm really keen to do more and more of. And that comes to me from listening to students and them saying they are engaging in these 2-hour podcasts. This idea of them being dum-dums who can't concentrate for more than 20 seconds is nonsense. The stuff we're giving them just isn't engaging enough. And they are engaging with podcasts and long-form media. And if you look at, going back to Kendrick Lamar, because I will crowbar Kendrick Lamar into every conversation I'm ever in, during the great rap beef of 2024, Drake versus Kendrick Lamar, the website genius.com, which analyzes lyrics, crashed because people from around the world, largely young people, wanted to do some English literature in the summertime, essentially, and break down the lyrics and figure out what they were saying, what were the subliminal meanings and metaphors and analogies within their lyricism. Young people crave this. They want to learn. They love language. They want to connect. We are not giving them opportunities to practice the skills that we all know they need. And by listening to students and seeing what they're into, get these insights into how we can improve education if we listen.
Listening is key, isn't it? And I think we move too much. We move too quickly between things. We don't really see those interests, that desire from the children. We just see technology, or we see education as what we've got to get from one thing to another. And I think the art form of teaching is huge. And it's an interesting career because there's so much science of learning and then so much research, but then actually what's that look like in practice is going to look completely different. And getting those foundations of what we want is really important. And hopefully the discussion is getting there to highlight those, because I think that depth, that listening is so important. But when you're thinking about, we've talked a lot about the students, about their voices and some of the really innovative ways that you have supported and put in place. But what are some of those biggest challenges you faced in implementing these new ideas with approach to assessment, to the formative assessment throughout it? And I would say probably one of the biggest barriers that most listeners would be thinking about of, well, I've got to get them to that endpoint assessment at the end. So what barriers have you come across, and have you got any words of wisdom?
Prototypes. Start with small, ring-fenced, sandbox-like prototypes. So what I mean by that is 10 learners or one class for one assignment, part of the year, just as a test of efficacy and provenance to your line managers to show that there might be something in it, you know? So low risk, no cost prototype, where it's a project whereby you are testing to see whether it works. You are trying, and in every institution there will be a teacher or two who is keen to give this a go. And if they've got the backing of, well, I'm lucky, James. I've got a great boss here at my college, and I know he's got my back, and I know that is a precious thing. And my immediate line manager as well. She's just magnificent in that she's always encouraging me, pushing me. I know that's not always the case for a lot of people, but if you are in a situation where you haven't got the confidence or momentum that I'm lucky to have at this point, many years later in my career, what I did to start with was those prototypes. Again, borrowing from my career in the media industry, start with small little tests so I can show my line manager and present to them that this is what we did. The student engagement improved by X amount. Look at this student survey. Here's the outcomes. Here's the results. Here's some student feedback and testimony, just to prove that there's something in it. And of course, the awarding bodies need to be in alignment with this. Your head of quality at any institution has connection with any awarding body. And if you're unsure as to whether it is viable or even possible to submit, I don't know, a vlog or perhaps do a witness statement for a live project for a bit of criteria or a bit of coursework, your head of quality will be able to find out, so it's written, there's no ambiguity there, whether you can or cannot. It's not always the case where it has to be just a written piece or has to be submitted in one or two ways. There are innumerable different ways people can submit evidence, and your head of quality, that's what they're for. Get them to reach out and to find out, is it okay if they do a podcast for this? Or is it okay if they do a professional discussion for this? And once you get that confirmation in a small, and I'll stress this, a small ring-fenced sandbox, as it were, of a prototype, test it, see if it works. And then if the students are into it, who knows, it might grow to 2 classes the year after. And who knows, it then might be presented to a department at one team meeting, and it might be something that grows, and so on and so on. And that's how I've done everything I've ever done, is the truth, James. Just those little prototypes is the way we've done it. Most recently, we did it with deep fakes at our college. I've made some deep fakes of our principal, introducing himself to all of our refugee learners from Iran, Turkey, and Ukraine. And we translated him into different languages, and he gave them a little well-being check, welcome message to the college. He's a man who can only speak English in actuality, but using AI, we could translate him into these different languages. And that was cool. That was great. And that was a test with just me and him doing it. And then it had an impact across probably 300-400 students. And then we realized that we actually teach people about, I suppose, skepticism and identifying what is real and what is not real here, and helping them to develop what the great leader Audrey Tang calls antibodies against fake news, preparing you to identify and be able to see what is real and what is not when it does come along, by showing it to you before the actual real fakery comes your way. So we've made more deepfakes for an AI course, which we're launching on Monday, of Anthony, our principal, scattered throughout the AI module for students. And they've got to identify what's the real Anthony and what's the fake Anthony. And it's scaled up to, all 5,000 students will do that now. It starts small, always. And then you scale it up, or you kill the prototype, or you iterate on the prototype, but always start really small.
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Future Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurumcareers.com and subscribe today. Futurum Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
BBC News reports on the uncertainty over the future of vocational courses, with over 450 schools and colleges in England saying they are unsure which courses they can offer in 2025. The government is conducting a review of post-16 education, and the Department for Education says this will support BTEC students. But the results of the review will not be out until December. This means schools and colleges are unsure which courses they can offer students in September 2025, despite having open days scheduled in the coming weeks. 450 schools have written to the government saying that the uncertainty is making it extremely difficult to plan for the future. Not only can they not tell prospective students which courses will be on offer, they can't tell staff either. More than 200 vocational qualifications, including BTECs and other post-16 courses, were due to be scrapped under the previous government, but days before the first funding changes were due, Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said there would be a pause and review. The 455 schools and colleges in England have joined the Protect Student Choice campaign, a coalition of 25 education organisations and unions. The review comes against a backdrop of issues that have plagued the rollout of T-levels, introduced 3 years ago. Ms Phillipson confirmed T-levels will continue, despite high dropout rates and issues with exam boards. Schools Week highlights the names of the 12-strong panel appointed by government to review the curriculum and assessment. It follows the appointment in July of Professor Becky Francis, the Chief Executive of the Education Endowment Foundation, to lead the review. The panel includes Academy Trust Chief Executives Cassie Buchanan and Dr Vanessa Ogden, SEND consultant Gary Orban and exams expert Professor Joanne Baird. It also includes Reach Foundation Curriculum Director John Hutchinson and Funmilola Stewart, who leads on equality, diversity and inclusion across the Dixon's Trust. Professor Francis said, "We have ensured that primary, secondary and post-16 sectors are represented," and added that alongside its call for evidence due to launch in September, the review would engage and consult with crucial stakeholder groups and work closely with education staff on the ground. Full details of the panel can be found in the article on the Schools Week website. Hundreds of students are set to miss out on Freshers Week because their accommodation will not be ready. This is according to BBC Bristol, which says Bristol University brought forward Freshers Week so students living in the new Bedminster Metalworks block will struggle to attend events as the residence will not open until the 14th of September. The university says the 819 students affected will be compensated and has offered £250 and promised extra events. But student union officers say the news leaves a sour taste. Legally binding contracts for the new accommodation mean that moving in date cannot be changed. The university brought the Freshers' Week date forward after a review of its academic year. In Wales, record numbers of pupils are being educated out of mainstream schools according to new figures. The figure of 2,279 is more than twice what it was in 2009 to 10 and 28% higher than before the pandemic. The Welsh Government said since the pandemic there had been an increasing demand for provision other than at school, including for physical health and mental health, as well as issues such as anxiety. The figures released do not include those educated outside of school due to parent choice. This has also been rising. Full details of this story can be found on BBC Wales. Finally, The Guardian reports that cleaners at a prestigious UK girls' school have won a dispute over pay and conditions. A strike that was due to take place next week has also been called off. The group of cleaners belonging to the United Voices of the World, a grassroots trade union for low-paid migrant workers, voted to strike after the school's contractor wanted to reduce their working time from 43 to 38 weeks a year, but offered only a £1.55 hourly pay rise in return. After the vote and appeals from teachers and former students, the contractor offered more pay, annual increases, and to meet the London living wage from next year. Whilst the James Allen's Girls' School, known as JAGS, declined to comment, it is understood that former pupils distributed leaflets about the strike and called on the school's leaders to set a good example to its pupils. This has been your Teachers Talk Radio News with Joe Fox.
So just before the news, Scott and I were talking about the effective implementation from teachers and also how they would take some of these innovative approaches and use technology to really give children a voice give them a reason, give them a way to demonstrate that depth and be challenged in ways that are beyond pen and paper. And it made me think of some research I've been reading recently by Pat McCree, where he talks about teachers, and this is just summarising it, that for teachers to get something new, they've got to see it. And they've got to try it, keep it, before they can actually tailor it to themselves and really own that change and that adaptation. But often technology can be a temptation to use. I've got to use it. I've got to use it to motivate and engage, but don't really have it for a purpose. So how have you been able to balance that idea of academic integrity and know with teachers and make sure that they are using technology for a meaningful purpose within your setting?
The idea of academic integrity and skin in the game for a lot of these educators is crucial, particularly in further education where I work and in my sector, where we've got these proud professionals, James, who've done 10, 20, 30, 40-year careers, as and mastering their trade and profession, and then in many instances retrain and become lecturers. That's a large part of our staff body is made up of that historically. And the idea of doing things the right way that aligns with industry is ultimately what is the ace card in the conversation. If it has efficacy and it has legs in terms of it being done in industry and done in the trade or done in the jobs that they're connected to or they're preparing young people to go into, then that is the main thing that we need to have in place. So the idea of the integrity being in place for us, what is most important is our industry in need of this skill set, our industry needing our young people to have communication skills, the ability to critically think and problem solve and cooperate in teams against the clock. Because if that's the case, then our projects and assessments need to prepare them for this. And we are thinking as much about that as we are about that university progression. To be quite honest with you, we are not talking about university progression as much as you'd think. We're thinking about progression in a more general sense. And that can be to entry level work, and often is. It can be to an apprenticeship. It could be to another course. It could be to a level 4 course, maybe, and not a full degree. Or it can be, in some instances, of course, to a university degree, but increasingly that is not the only place they are progressing to. So for us, the question of integrity is more about what are the skills needed in the future in the industries we're preparing them for, and in terms of those analytical thinking, active learning, analysis, initiative, resilience, ideation, flexibility, all these skills that we hear about time and time again, these skills that industry need. Because, like you say, we don't know the jobs of the future, do we? But we've got an idea of what the skills are going to be. We're going to need to train our young people to have are. And that's all we can guide them towards. That's our North Star, really, what industry needs and the skills of the future that we know are needed.
And so do you have a really close relationship with industry? And because I think the concept of skills is really important. And from a primary perspective, that idea of critical thinking, and I often think actually some of our children through our computing curriculum, when they look at the digital literacy, where they're looking at real and fake, and they're looking at those elements already, in some ways are better than the teachers. They could probably spot a fake email better than some people that I know, and especially tell them stories. My parents or my mum pick up her phone from Microsoft and them nearly getting onto her account and then giving things away as well. And so it's there is a big disconnect with that. But do you have lots of conversations with industry, and what does industry want from education?
Yeah, absolutely. We are entwined. We exist to, prepare our young people to thrive in our community, in our businesses and developing and pushing forward our industries. So we have, whether it be coffee mornings, or whether it be them coming in sponsoring projects, or whether it be them providing work experience opportunities, or whether it be the connections from the teachers themselves, who more often than not have got those connections. It's crucial. And also, the students come alive if they see, the a bit of reality, as it were, bubble through into their day to day. If they can, it's like when you have a great or guest speaker come into a school or college, the students remember that, and they often tell the parents about it, because it's a bit of truth, bit of reality, a bit of the future, a glimpse of what might be actualizing in front of them. So it's crucial for us to try and strengthen that and build that in to the day to day of our learners' curriculum, in the sense that their projects are preparing them for that step. The scaffold is being built for them to actually leave us and to go into industry or university or an apprenticeship. So that connection is crucial, and the research, the continuing CPD that we have to do to make sure we're match fit and ready to train the skills that are needed in the future. We've built an incredible Createch green screen room, essentially a virtual production studio, where you can do motion capture, cinematic visuals, the likes of which you might see in a Marvel movie. We have had our creative industries team all summer upskilling, wearing the motion capture suit, and practicing using this industry grade equipment, because even though they've had great careers in radio and games and broadcast, they are preparing people for 10, 20, 30 years into the future. So we need to continually upskill ourselves. And in further education, that's something that we do really well, a continual CPD, and keeping ourselves match fit, as it were.
And it gives them, I know you talk about synonyms earlier, but the synonyms you were saying, there's a purpose. What can something that children can hold on to and think, actually, yeah, that's why I'm learning about X, Y, and Z. And we do a unit with our year sixes about computer aided design. Really simple, really easy, manipulating text, but they still see a real purpose. Actually, okay, I can create something. And I think it's one of their first things. Yes, they may do DT projects and other things, but when they created something and see it in the flesh as well, wow, it's the eyes open. And I think,
that's Bloom's taxonomy stuff, though, isn't it, James? You're moving them up through the lower level to the higher level thinking, through the defining and listing, all the way through to the creating and synthesizing. That's why it's connecting. That's real, genuine learning, isn't it?
Yeah, and it goes beyond, for me, the word engaging. And I think there is a problem with the word of using technology and engaging, because when you use that word, you think, okay, you're glued to the screen, that's it. But what I like to use is the word motivated, because if you've got someone, like you were talking about the green screen there, or the computer aided design, or video production or podcast, the children will then actually see the product and think, okay, I need to do better. I need to go back and have a look at it. And it's that metacognition of, like, how can I improve? How can I be iterative with this? And it goes beyond the four walls of the classroom. You think about COVID and you think about how technology was forced onto everyone there. We've broken down what those four walls of the classroom are. But my concern is that we've gone backwards in some ways. We've shown what was possible. Not necessarily in the best ways. We've gone to the extremities. It was forced upon us. But I think actually, I know students who we've given technology to, we've shown them a few foundational skills, and they have absolutely flown with bits and pieces. And I've had some of my most disadvantaged pupils of all wanting to do spelling practice at home late at night. But it's that motivation for learning, that love of learning is so important. And whatever it is, I think that's the key thing that us as educators, we want out of our children. We want them to be discerning, we want them to be critical thinkers, we want all these skills. But for me, having that motivation and that love of learning in some ways or another is so important.
Oh, it's everything, mate. That curiosity, wonder, I'm so lucky that I can say authentically that I bounce into work and I'm really excited about what's happening. I do believe this is the most interesting time in the history of education, the potential of what might be, what might happen next, because of these technologies we have that can free up human potential. I really am excited about that. And it's crucial that our teachers are given that backing, love, support, CPD, time, dare I say it, to top themselves up, because they need to be full of that energy in order to infuse it into their their curriculum as well as their classrooms. And that's something that I'm trying to make it my mission to do, mate, is the truth. In our college, trying to help our teachers make sure they've got everything they need and the time that they need and the support they need to actually be their best.
So before we go on, I want to talk about the use of AI you've done and how you've done that throughout with your teachers in particular. One thing we've alluded to a little bit, and I think is a common theme in quite a lot, is our most disadvantaged pupils. How have you seen that the role of technology and your process of using summative assessment has almost leveled the playing field and given them opportunities that they wouldn't have done through the traditional forms of assessment?
So there's a student a few years back called Mark, who was one of the most articulate chaps I'd ever met and could speak so eloquently about music. So I love music. He talks to me about rock and hip hop all the time, and he would always struggle with the blank page of the assignment he was given to submit for his BTEC in games development. It was so having him use things like voice typing to transcribe up his thoughts, and then the essay becomes an editing process rather than him staring down the blank page, helped him to get the merits and distinctions he needed to get to university and to then go on to become a games developer, which I'm very proud to say he is now. That's the stuff. That's the stuff for me in terms of that, for helping people find a side road or a side door into their future, rather than it being the one and only route that has been lit up for them. And the more I talk about it, the more I realise that's what I've spent my career trying to do, and helping people learn using particularly generative AI tools, explaining things and breaking it down as if you're 10 years old, relating it to examples you're interested in, using prompts with our learning support assistants who sit with our learners who have diverse learning needs, and explain it in relation to Marvel superheroes, or explain it in relation to the reality TV show that the student loves, or break it down step by step and personalize the resource and translate it into the native tongue of many of our ESOL learners to help them to get to grips with it in a way that makes sense to them. Adapting resources in a way that is quick and efficient and helps them to, again, have access. That equity of access is crucial to us. And when it comes to people with different learning needs, developing learner plans using AI to help us come up with different strategies to help people with ADHD or Asperger's with techniques and methods, because AI can help us to think differently, to think from perspectives and give us expertise to draw on to help inform our support plans and ways of thinking. Our planning documentation has never been better, by using it to help us with stretch and challenge, with Bloom's taxonomy objectives, and helping us align it to industry needs, freeing up teachers' time because the AI is helping us to create the lesson plans and schemes of work, but more to the point, helping to adapt the learning to make it more accessible to these different learners, helping us to differentiate and adapt resources quickly using AI as well, freeing up teachers' time because they're not spending so much time with admin, to be more present in the class, doing more human tasks like one-to-ones and coaching and small groups training, as it were. We're using AI primarily to free up teachers' time. And a byproduct of that is that they have more time to be with the students, which is the most memorable, impactful use of their energy. When it comes to people with learning needs, adapting resources and making sure that they are accessible, broken down, scaffolded in a way that relates to them and their interests. That's really exciting. And we're training up our learning support staff at the moment to do that, where they can work with a learner, find out what their thing is, what their learning need is, and then change resources and adapt it so it's in a way that is more within touching distance than it was prior.
I think this idea of the mechanics of the classroom, going in on a Monday morning, kicking the photocopier because it's not doing what you need it to do, is a huge element of this. So, what are some of those ideas that, and you suggested a few there, have saving teachers time? Because there's a big thing about workload and a big thing about saving teachers time and being effective. But what I like to think about, or being efficient, because what I like to think about it is in the terms of being effective in the classroom. Actually, if I'm not spending time doing X, Y, and Z, just to get the mechanics of the classroom, cutting out, sticking out, clearing up, doing X, Y, and Z, I can then be present. Mm-hmm. And I think we're guilty of not being present enough. And I sit in many of classrooms and watch teachers, and actually that stretch, that challenge, that work that they can just do, that the ideas of the questioning that you can have with the children, and the planning of those bits before, actually at the moment they're taken up by getting the mechanics of the classroom. So what are some of those tangible things that you've done that some of our listeners may take away and say, actually, I'm going to go and explore that and implement?
So in May 2023 we wrote a prompt. So for those who haven't played with AI too much yet, a prompt essentially is the instruction, the text that you give to an AI. And we wrote a prompt that created a great lesson plan. And we gave open brackets within that prompt for the teacher to write in what their subject is, how long the lessons are, who the learners are, and what the subtopics within that lesson were. And by using that prompt across all of our 50 subject areas, our lesson plans and schemes of work were submitted on the other side of the summer in 2023 in a timely, efficient manner, the likes of which we have never seen. And I've been at my college 15 years. Standardized, beautiful, creative, well formatted, Bloom's taxonomy objectives with stretch and challenge, with impact, made very clear how you're going to adapt things, and the criteria mapped to each lesson as well, so you can see how it fluently sequenced from one lesson to the next. That summer, our staff come back and said they actually had a bit of a summer. They had a bit of time. They had a bit of evening back, as it were, when they returned after the summer as well. So maybe have a glass of wine with their partner, to maybe not worry about endless lesson plans and admin, because they had this thought partner rather, in the AI, who could actually work alongside them as this sort of sparring buddy to help them with their work. So they were not as adrift, as alone. And the time savings of our staff back in, this was October 2023 when we assessed it, were because of the planning documents over the summer, because of the resource creation of slides, quizzes, starters, plenaries, resources, flashcards. Our staff reported a saving of 5.1 hours on average was saved for them to focus on more meaningful tasks. And those meaningful tasks they reported as being those conversations, those coaching chats with students, being more present and able to focus on the more energetic elements of their role. That was everything, James. So ever since then, we've been doubling down on this method and helping our staff to use AI. Constant training, CPD, constant prompt of the week being shared with them, a prompts document where staff can copy and paste prompts for writing reports up, for helping them with their feedback for students, for simplifying things for people with different learning needs, for breaking things down step by step in a way that makes sense to someone as if they were 10 years old, and so on and so on. And these little incremental wins, these prompts that save 5 minutes here, 2 minutes there, 10 minutes there, it builds. And our staff have got this thought partner, this AI, with them now, using these tools, free tools that we all have access to, using these tools deliberately, mindfully, and intentionally with support and love and care from our digital team to help them use it the right way with intention, like I say. It's been crucial. And now I'm talking to you now in September 2024. We'll do the next survey in October for time saved, but a sneak peek of the results suggests that 5 hours has maintained. Our staff are still reporting at 5 hours a week at least saved to focus their energies on things that matter more. And that is the way forward for us. Keep freeing up the teachers' time, because if we do that, we unlock their potential. And if we unlock their potential, the rest will follow.
And I think it's that headspace as well, isn't it? The space of that sparring partner, because often we see a concern, and it's probably ill-informed because they haven't had the training, that AI is going to take over teachers. What would your response be to that?
I think it's nonsense, mate. To be honest with you, that every time I hear that, I think it's I think people, I don't know, they're sort of holding back from actually giving it a go, hoping that the moral panic will come along and then this will be swept away. I'm sure moral panic is in the post with AI, and there'll be some misuses of AI in the next calendar year, I'm sure, of deep fakes that make us all think, oh, we shouldn't use this. It does that horrible stuff. I'm sure that's coming. However, I'm of the opinion that this is too much power too soon. Generative AI, I think it is overwhelming. I think it is scary. The power we have, and the guardrails are needed. But I can't just tut and shake my head at it. I've got to try and be proactive and control what I can control. And our young people are using this now. They're using Snapchat's My AI as a therapist and the essay writer. They're using ChatGPT to help them with their coursework and like job applications. They're doing it now, young people. And they're doing it without guidance and scaffold from us. And shame on us as educators for not helping them to use it the right way and helping them. I think we need to. It's our responsibility, and I think it's crucial that we do. So I'm really focused on the fact that we need to help our young people use this the right way. It's crucial.
And use on our teachers. And I think there is a massive disparity across education at the moment in terms of schools that have technology, schools that have nothing at all, schools that are barely surviving to exist, small little schools that maybe in Devon or Cornwall and other things where you only have 36 pupils. And I think it's a really interesting time and space, and looking at what the DfE are doing and what the government are doing in terms of all of this, because it can be really, really powerful, and those guardrails need to be in place. And I think, as you said earlier, we need to be deliberate, we need to be mindful, we need to be intentional with this implementation as well. But if you think about the future, what would your ideal be? And I think we've alluded to some things that you're already doing that's phenomenal, and some changes. But how could you take your approach and almost roll it out across the country? Or what are some of the things that are holding you back as well? And what are some of those barriers and walls that you are still finding in the space that you are?
I went to Estonia last year, James, for a while, and Estonia's digital skills are much written about in academic circles, and they're a digital first country, a young country, who've embraced digital by default in many ways across their culture, and the way they use digital seamlessly in their education was fascinating. And I went to spend time with them, and it was really interesting. And but what that wasn't necessarily the thing that I took away from Estonia as being like the secret sauce as to why they're educational scores are so good and the results are good. It wasn't the fact they were just digital by default as a nation. It was the fact that in nursery they had time and well trained, educated, revered, congratulated, well paid staff up until the age of 5. Every Estonian is in nursery until 5, developing those deeply human skills that are more valuable now than ever. Compassion, kindness, empathy, patience, cooperation, collaboration. Synonym is the word of the day, obviously. Synonyms for the terms that are in the World Economic Forum. Top 20 skills of the future, essentially, James, what I've just listed. The Estonians develop those and nurture them and understand that is what is needed before they get into school. And in school, they're assessed, again, using projects and assessed in a way that is more meaningful. There are, of course, exams and these different milestones as well, but they are doing meaningful tasks and projects as well as exams. These are not only exams that they are assessed by. And it was fascinating to see these people who are given that bedrock of developing those human skills and having those human skills valued, more to the point, by their civilization that they've created in recent history. I think that is what is needed to be valued more, these deeply human skills. And I don't think our current assessment practices and endpoint assessments, exams and essays necessarily care about those deeply human skills, or rather reward those deeply human skills. And until that aligns, I can't necessarily see things changing at the scale I want it to. That said, we see things in our college and other schools and colleges and universities that make you think, this is inevitable, that this is undeniable. Things will change for the better if we shine a light on these examples of best practice and hold them up and share them, and have these communities of teachers like this show is, I suppose, to talk about what might be until it manifests, and to keep sharing and to keep trying and to help one another. This is how change happens, and it is inspiring to be around people like yourself and the other folk at the AI and Education conference we were at recently, James. And that does make me think something's happening. And what is even more encouraging, maybe a lot of people might say, is that the Department for Education are leaning into this. I mean, they realise there is something here. They realise that this might unlock education and help with the way things will develop in the future. And I am legitimately optimistic about that because of the connections we've had at the DFE and the way they were talking about things, but also the research, the papers, the energy around this topic. It's noticeable in terms of the way technology has been spoken about in the past by the DFE. There's a genuine fascination with this, which encourages me.
I think it's been a fascinating conversation, and after, I'll give you a few minutes to think about this, but after we listen to our sponsor's message, I want you to think about what's that one nugget that you want to tell other educators, that they can start being brave and start thinking about how to integrate these things, because I think they've heard about some fascinating things, the changes and the impact that you've talked about this evening. But what's that one nugget of information to get them started on this journey? And I think from the news and from everything else we're hearing, they are listening, but we've also got to be that voice. So final word from our sponsors, and then what's that one nugget?
This show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Don't miss out. Level up your professional development today and visit johncattbookshop.com to explore the full range of titles. Use the code JCTTR2425 for 20% off your order. Happy reading.
Get set for the year ahead with the Bloomsbury Education Back to School sale. Save 30% on all Bloomsbury education books until 30th September. From the very best in research-led practice to trusted advice on inclusivity, behaviour and curriculum design, we've got something for everyone. Visit bloomsbury.com/B2S sale to shop now and save 30%. Bloomsbury Education, books for every step of your teaching journey.
How can you show your students the opportunities that await them? How can you fuel their aspirations and motivate them to achieve? Future Careers provides a wealth of stimulating resources aimed at encouraging 14 to 19-year-olds to pursue careers in STEM and SHAPE. We help you to show your students what they can aim for and how. From articles to activity sheets, animations to podcasts, all our resources align with Gatsby benchmarks and are free for you and your students to download. Visit futurecareers.com and subscribe today. Future Careers, helping teachers to inspire the next generation.
So what's that nugget, Scott, that you want to tell our educators that are listening?
I suppose the one thing that I'd like to share with educators that are listening is to think about this new technology that we are living around as a wingman, a teammate, a thought partner that can help alleviate the burden of planning, assessing, creating reports, and providing insights and examples, and ultimately making teaching a bit more sustainable. You are not alone anymore, in the sense that when you're doing an onerous task, you've got something to help you. And I would ask educators to try it on themselves first, to be curious and full of wonder with this fascinating superpower, try and bottle this lightning themselves. So 2023, it would have been January, I turned AI into a therapist, as it were, for myself. Turned it into George Orwell and David Bowie and Andre 3000 and other people I admire. And I got the AI to act like these heroes of mine. And I asked questions to it and got it to coach me. Because I was a bit frustrated with my career at the time. I was a bit disillusioned with digital addiction and the manipulation of technology amongst young people, and myself being addicted to my phone, embarrassingly. And by talking to the AI, it was acting as David Bowie or acting as George Orwell, give me advice and career pointers and ways to think differently. I lost myself as a 40-year-old man talking to this simulated version of the great 1984 writer. I lost myself. And the immersion, the personalization, and the fun of it just made me think, okay, maybe there's something in this. And then I started to turn it into the theorists and writers that our childcare students were studying, like Lev Vygotsky. And then the students would be quizzing Lev Vygotsky about the zone of proximal development or whatever it is they were learning about, talking to the AI as if it was Lev, source checking and being critical and skeptical always. But that's part of the process. You teach them about his critical thinking skills. But that all started with me testing it, playing, trying, being curious. And from that point on, it's become my thought partner. And every day I use AI to help free up my time so I can be more present and have more coaching chats and have more cups of tea and coffee and biscuits with the humans that I want to spend more time with, staff and students. And during that commercial break, I used AI to help me use my note document on the screen to extract one idea that might be useful to help inspire teachers. So AI actually helped me with this answer just now. So it wasn't just on me. I had my little thought partner to help me distill and think through all my numerous notes I've put into a Google Doc over the last 2 years. So yeah, my one nugget, as it were, would be, it's your thought partner. And it's there to help you. And be curious, be full of wonder, and yeah, the rest will follow.
Thank you, Scott, for being so honest and inspirational and sharing some of the amazing, innovative ways that you're pushing the boundaries and thinking about the why. Why are we doing this? Why are we making the mechanics actually write an essay? And I think going back to the core of what we're doing, why we're in education, and some of the stories of your pupils that have gone off and left and doing some game design or working with the DFE, and the work you're doing as well has been really inspirational. And hopefully for those educators listening to this, there'll be a spark, there'll be a bit of wonder and curiosity around this. So thank you for listening to Teachers Talk Radio. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation this evening. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact us on social channels, and don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for many more episodes of Teachers Talk Radio. To listen back to Teacher Talk Radio shows, please download the Podbean app or visit your favourite podcast player and search Teacher Talk Radio. You can also visit ttradio.org /listen back. Follow us on Twitter at @TTRadioOfficial and tweet us using the hashtag #TTRadio. We're on LinkedIn and all the other social media as well. Once again, thank you, Scott, for what has been another fascinating conversation, and I know our paths will cross again.
Thank you, James.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.